Hello and welcome to Baffling Cyclops. I'm David.
And I'm Pepper Proxy.
And today we're going to reveal a part of Pepper's life, which is the elliptical.
Okay.
Which, when I was thinking about it, I think you've done it at least 6 days a week for 8 or 9 years.
I've done it. I've close, if not that really close.
Mm-hmm. So in that,
and I do it for the cardio. It's the elliptical. It's like the elliptical machine.
Right.
I think most people know what it is. But I do it for cardio and for health. But I also do it because it helps me sleep better, and it helps me with anxiety. So it's kind of a combination of a bunch of stuff.
Right, and it's an important part of your routine.
Yes.
And if you don't do it, you miss it. Like a couple times you've been sick, or for another reason you couldn't do it for a while, and you miss it when you don't.
I do miss it, but I also have been known to overdo it, and that's not great. When I think for a whole year, this is not bragging at all. It's just a sign that I was having issues with it. I was getting 140,000 steps or more a week.
Ouch.
For a year, and 10 miles or more a day, which is that's not healthy. It's not healthy.
No, it wasn't a healthy.
Yeah.
It wasn't a healthy rate for you.
No.
But one of the side effects of the elliptical is
besides my nice looking legs,
your luscious legs. Besides your muscular luscious legs. Was you watch TV while you were on the elliptical.
Yes.
So, in simple math, 6 days a week.
Yeah.
For that many years, you've watched a lot of TV.
I have consumed, and I like TV, so I'm not complaining, but I have consumed a lot of television.
And I should set this up, that sometimes your elliptical watching bothers me because I'll say, oh, this TV show looks interesting. And you're like, I have already seen it.
I've watched it twice.
Yeah, there are 140 episodes and you're like, yes, I've seen it.
I've watched it in a month.
Yeah, exactly. So,
and I don't like to repeat stuff. So,
yeah. So, but I thought it was, so I thought we could go over some of your favorite shows that you've watched on the elliptical.
Okay.
And I will also say you've watched so many shows on the elliptical that you don't remember shows that you've watched on the elliptical.
Correct.
Like we'll see I'll say, oh, we should watch this one, and you'll say, oh yeah, and then you'll go, oh, I watched it.
Yeah, that's true.
And you're constantly also on the lookout for new things to watch on the elliptical as well.
Yeah, so if I ask somebody like a recommendation, I really mean it. I'm not trying to make small talk. I'm trying to find content.
And we should also say, when you ask for a recommendation, you're not looking for Breaking Bad as the recommendation.
No.
You're not asking for someone for their favorite show. You're asking for a hidden gem.
Correct.
That you probably haven't watched that you might enjoy at some point. And we should also say they're divided into two categories, which is things that you enjoy and hate watches.
Yes. There have been a couple shows that, well, 3 categories. Shows I really enjoy, shows that I hate watch, and shows that are good for the elliptical, but not necessarily good.
Right.
And
so you wouldn't like sit and watch it with me. It's just something to pass the time.
Yeah. And sometimes there are shows that I absolutely enjoyed.
Right.
And then it became a full-time job to finish the series.
Right. Well, sometimes things go from great to hate watch over the course of a run.
I can think of 2.
Well, name them.
So I never finished The Walking Dead.
Right.
I really enjoyed it, and it was the energy was good as far as like my pace on the elliptical.
You could pretend you were running from zombies.
Exactly. From walkers.
From walkers.
I haven't finished it, and I've thought about going back, but that was one that I really enjoyed, and I even recommended it to people, and then I couldn't even hate watch it because it just was so troubling to me.
And I think one of the reasons that you got to that point with that show was you were so emotionally invested in the characters that when they started not treating the characters with as much care as they had been treated, you felt betrayed because you were still emotionally invested in the characters that were there.
Well, it felt like, spoil alerts maybe ahead, but we're not going to be spoiling any like brand new shows. I'm not opposed to a main character being killed. No, I'm not. Like I'm rewatching The Good Wife with you because I thought you would enjoy it. And one of the main characters is killed. A character that's been around for over 5. We're in the middle of the 5th season, so I'm not opposed to that. But it just felt like very much like a formula, and it was emotionally manipulative. And also there was some behind the scenes like crap going on with the showrunners and the environment that they filmed the show. Mm-hmm. It just seemed like it was. I was thinking about it way more than I should.
Yeah, I agree. And I should also say, for me, I can watch dystopian shows and movies, but they have to be limited.
Yeah.
Like
I love them.
And you love them. So you'll watch like an endless zombie series, but for me, I don't mind a zombie movie. I don't even mind a zombie movie that ends in a depressing way.
Yeah.
It's just I can't exist. Like I don't want to spend that much time in that world to watch 100 episodes of a zombie show. And it's that way with almost all dystopian stuff where I'll be like, oh, this is good, and then I'm like, oh, so nothing changes and it's just as bad the next week. So.
Well, the beginning, also like the opening scene or one of the opening scenes from the first episode of The Walking Dead, it was so phenomenal. It was like that show, I can't remember the name, but Minnie Driver was in it.
Oh, the one where the con artist family comes in and takes over other people's lives.
Yeah. The first episode of that was phenomenal.
Yeah,
it was so good that I even rewatched it with you.
Yeah, it was great.
And then it went downhill real fast.
Yeah, it was
Eddie Izzard was in it.
It would have made a better movie, I think.
Or just a 10 episode.
Yeah, or a limited series, like a BBC season of 6 or something like that. It probably would have been better. But so why don't you give a sample of something that you hate watched, though? Okay,
so a show that I really enjoyed for the Elliptical, I would never recommend watching it with you. It was Sons of Anarchy.
Right.
And Katie Siegel's in it.
It was great.
I just, it was just it was kind of like fun and fake drama. And then I would say probably the whole last season, it was a hate watch, but I had to I'm like, I have to finish it. But that was rough going.
Well, I just know every once in a while you watching your show coincides with someone else watching the show, or they recommend it to you, and then I sometimes see the text back and forth between you and other people. What was the one you just watched? Firefly?
Ugh, I hate watched that one too. That was a filler show.
Is it called Firefly?
Yeah, it's called Firefly.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And that one had complicated timelines, and it was just a lot.
It's that show though. It was a Netflix show. I was done with it in a week because I need at least an hour a day, sometimes a little bit more, because I like to get my 10,000 steps on my elliptical. So I was able to finish that within a week.
Right.
But man, that was kind of fun to hate watch because my friend, one of my good friends, was hate watching it too.
Well, and one of the early ones that you watched on the Elliptical was Breaking Bad.
Well, you and I tried to watch Breaking Bad together.
And you did not like it. And so I stopped watching because I generally only watch TV with you. I don't have a lot of time to watch TV by myself. So I don't watch stuff outside of what I watch with you. And so we watched the first episode or 2 episodes together. We watched
until there was a scene where somebody was being dissolved. This is kind of like a spoiler, but not a big spoiler. Yeah. Somebody was being human remains were being dissolved in a bathtub, and it broke through the floor because they were idiots. And then I couldn't watch. I'm like, that's just too gross for me.
And so then you went and watched it in the Elliptical.
Yeah, I did. I tried it again. I would say It's absolutely in my top 10 best television series of all time.
Right. So that's one. Another one that I know is one of your top shows was Game of Thrones.
Game of Thrones was in the middle.
Well,
Friday Night Lights is it for Elliptical. It's in the top 5 for all time, top 20. Game of Thrones is in the top 20.
So here's the reason why I thought Game of Thrones would be in your top.
Okay.
It's because you were into Game of Thrones while you were watching it. You talked about it, and I would say you were heavily emotionally invested in the show. And
really?
Then,
okay.
And then one day, I was just happened to be upstairs, so it must have been a Saturday.
Yeah.
And I was reading, and I heard you say, "No, no." And the elliptical stopped. Yeah. The show stopped. Like this is, and you're.
I'm getting tears in my eyes right now. Thinking about it.
And you're, and when you do the elliptical in the basement, so I can't hear unless you like say something. Yeah. I thought you had fallen off the elliptical, so like I threw my stuff down and I ran down the stairs, like whipped the door open and went in, and you were like,
"Board the door."
You were like, "They all died."
I know.
And it was the famous Red Wedding episode.
Well, again, spoiler alert if you haven't watched it, but I started watching Game of Thrones maybe while the 3rd or 4th season was airing. Mm-hmm. Because I like to have a stockpile of shows.
Right.
I don't like to watch things that are weekly because what if I want to know what's going on?
Right.
So I knew about the Red Wedding. I knew about it because obviously it was all over the internet.
Right.
But as I was watching the episode, I'm like, oh, well, this is a wedding. I did not put 2 and 2 together at all. And then when the music started playing and then the slaughter started to happen, I was so fooled because even though I knew about it, of course that was the Red Wedding. I think I just tried to fool myself.
Right. So, but I ran downstairs and you were sitting on the little stairway in the basement crying. and
Game of Thrones made me cry a few times, I have to say.
Right. You did. Yeah. I'm just not usually here for most of it. So that was one where I happened to be here for that one. And one other question I had for you about this is what are some like lost gems, things you never would have watched, but you were kind of so desperate to find content for the elliptical that you decided like, I'm going to take a chance on this show. And then like, once you got into it, you liked it. Because just one example I know is we watched the first couple seasons of Homeland together, but then you were hungry for content, so you decided to finish it out, and it got bad, and then it got good again, and it got bad. Yeah. So things like that, though. What's something that
Justified
Justified
is a great show, and I never would have watched that without the elliptical. Deadwood is phenomenal, and that was a show that I watched on the elliptical. I'm kind of looking at a list. One other thing about Game of Thrones I have to say is you never caught me doing this, but I think it was the last season. The way they shot it, the cinematography, it was so dark. It was just so dark. I couldn't see because I'm watching it on my little
Kindle Fire.
It's a nice fire. It's not like the cheapest fire, but I couldn't see anything. So I had to turn off all the lights in the basement.
And exercise in the dark.
Pitch black while like watching like people get slaughtered. It was maybe not the best time for me. The Handmaid, I mean, this is not but Handmaid's Tale, I probably would not have watched that if I hadn't watched it on the elliptical. And it's in my top 10 best shows of all time.
And that's one I probably would have tried to get you to watch. But then after hearing about it, I realized how dystopian it was. And it was just not for me, even though, like, I have watched a couple episodes of it over your shoulder, and we've talked about it, and it looks great.
Yeah.
It just seems so depressing to me. And everything I hear about it just makes me think it sounds even more depressing.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because, I read the book back in the 80s when it came out. And the book was phenomenal. It's a really good book. I would say, we could argue, but I would say the show is better than the book. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wow.
One of the other ones that I would say The Americans might be in my top 5, but for sure my top 10 of all time shows. I loved that show for the Elliptical. It was phenomenal.
Yeah, you talked about The Americans probably more than any other show that you watched. And you have that positive thing where if an actor from The Americans is in something, or if a plot line mirrors The Americans, you give it extra.
Well, the woman who was
juice. Extra juice.
I do give it extra juice. I was so excited. I'm sorry I cut you off. The woman who was in The Assistant, and then she was in Ozark, and she's in The Americans. I think her name is Ruth, or maybe that's her character. She's stunning, and she has really curly blonde hair.
Gotta look her up.
I think she's won an Emmy. Do you remember that movie, The Assistant? We only watched it because she was in it. But she was one from The Americans that I love. Plus, The Americans is set in it starts in the 80s, which is kind of a time that I remember, and I remember being so afraid of the Cold War. So I think it just really resonated with me.
And they do a good job with the period setting too.
They do.
Her name is Julia Garner.
Oh, she's phenomenal.
Yeah, she's one I've kind of come to also when I see she's in something, I'm like, oh, that's good. Yeah.
Yeah, I love her.
So that's one of your best. And I know we already said Friday Night Lights, but I don't want to downplay Friday Night Lights just because you loved it so much.
I loved it so much, so much.
And
one that I tried to watch more than, I would say 3 times, maybe more than 3 times, but I know for sure 3 times, was The Crown.
And you did not like The Crown.
I think I would like The Crown as a show, but for an elliptical show, it was hard going.
Well, and maybe that's another thing you should say is there are certain things that you want for an elliptical show, which is usually an hour is better than a half an hour.
Yes.
Drama is better than comedy.
I've watched some comedy, though, that's been good. As long as the pace is right.
So it's more about the pace of it. But you do like an hour-long show just because your workout tends to be an hour.
Yeah, for sure, I do.
So...
one show that was really good for the elliptical, but it turned out to be not such a great show, is 24. And I went back because you and I watched that when it first came out. And we watched a few seasons. But I went back, and I rarely rewatch. I went back and rewatched it from the very beginning to the very end.
And what was your takeaway from rewatching it?
It's good for the elliptical, and it was so silly. Watching it again, and maybe it's because the basement's a little dark. But one of the things that happened was I realized how dark their workspace was, and it was like there was no light, and I'm like, how are they like saving the country and fighting terrorism? And his daughter was like fighting a cougar, I think, at one point, but that was outside. But anyway, I was like, gosh, it's so dark in their workspace. This is weird. How can they be so secretive and have all this stuff going on?
Maybe they're watching Game of Thrones.
Maybe I'm just really sensitive to the light.
So that is funny. And 24 is also one of those shows I think that you and I have talked about more recently, where I think it's very different to watch 24 when it's one episode a week than it is to watch it one episode after another. Because we were talking about the show Lost and how Lost probably wouldn't have lasted as long as it did if you didn't have those spaces in between to kind of fill in with your own imagination, or in the case of 24, your own paranoia and anxiety. Because the cliffhanger is not that much of a cliffhanger, because 24 ended on, I mean, it was just a show of cliffhanger after cliffhanger. Right. So it would end on cliffhangers, and then you could just be like, oh, I'll turn on the next episode and see how they get out of this cliffhanger. Yeah. So it's a little bit different.
And I just need to reiterate, 24 is not even in my top 100, I don't think.
Really?
No.
Okay.
I watch a lot of shows. I'm just kind of scrolling through a list. I pulled up Stacker, the 100 best shows of all time. I've watched a good amount of these shows. And I would say I don't agree with some of them. Number 99 is Sense8. It wasn't great. And then you have 24 as number 98.
So, my question to you then is, would you like people to recommend shows to you?
Yes.
So you are at Pepper Proxy on Twitter.
Yes.
And they can tweet, they can tag me too. I'm at Zumar. They can tweet you show recommendations.
Yes.
And if you've already seen it, you can tweet back your opinion.
Oh, okay. I would say the likelihood, I think it's 75% chance that I've seen it, or I've seen at least some of it.
Enough of it to know you don't like it.
Oh, can I just say one thing, though?
Say as much as you want.
So some of the slower paced shows, but the British ones are so good. They're perfect for the Elliptical. Because I like thrillers and crime procedurals. Those are great.
So all those British shows based on the Swedish and Norwegian dark shows that came out, you enjoy watching them down there.
Yeah, like Top of the Lake. I don't think that's British, but it was maybe Australian. Shows like that. And the woman from The Handmaid's Tale stars in it. So yeah, I do like, and that's a kind of a slow pace. Oh, and Gillian Anderson, she was in a British show about a serial killer. Really liked that too. So, and that was kind of slow. So there you go.
So you're inconsistent with what you're asking for from your elliptical shows.
Yes, I'm sorry.
There are no hard and fast rules.
Oh, the other one is I really like the teenage shows.
I know. I was going to say, because you burned through Riverdale and then eagerly
Vampire Diaries. I didn't finish it because it was on while I started. I never finished that one, but Vampire Diaries, Riverdale, Pretty Little Liars. Again, I didn't finish. Don't tell me who A is. I think I know, but I didn't finish it. Oh, Gossip Girl was a great elliptical show.
I hear they're remaking Pretty Little Liars.
Oh, I think it's Gossip Girl.
They're remaking Gossip Girl. I heard they were remaking Pretty Little Liars.
Oh, okay. Maybe I'll have more content.
Maybe it's going to be a different liar this time.
Maybe it's going to be B.
Mm-hmm. maybe they're not as pretty.
maybe they're a little rough and tumbled.
A little rough and tumble. Yeah. Rough and tumble liars.
They're just a little dishonest.
Toledo Liars.
I would watch that. I would watch the heck out of that show.
I know you
I could write that show.
All right. Well, thanks for the peek into your secret elliptical world.
Yeah.
And next time, if you think of more shows, many lost gems that you wanted to mention, you can add it to our podcast next week.
Sounds like a plan.
All right. Well, thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast and to read our show notes. Sign up for our newsletter at bafflingcyclops.com.